Good morning. This is Rhonda Edwards from the VMware Open Source Program Office, and I've got with me Dawn Foster, who is the Open Source Community Strategy Lead at VMware. She's going to be taking us through the Chaos project and what about it helps to scratch her itch within the open source community. Dawn?
Yeah, thank you, Rhonda. So I've been working in open source for 20 plus years. I've been doing this for a really long time, and I've always had a really deep passion for open source metrics and being able to measure the health of open source projects is something that's really important to me. One of the reasons this is so important is because a lot of my roles have been more on the community side, and that can be hard to justify. It can be really hard to continue to justify your own existence within a company and get them to continue to pay you for doing awesome things. And the way that I've been able to do that is by using a lot of data. So I spend a lot of time gathering data and metrics that help me show the business value of what I'm doing and why it's really important for the company that I work for. So always being able to have that data and tie it back to the business goals. And that's something that's been really important for me and I think has helped me be successful over the years. And one of the ways that I do that is through the Linux Foundation's Chaos project. So this is a project that's devoted entirely to measuring the health of open source software projects. So I'm on the governing board for this for Chaos. I'm also a maintainer for a couple of the working groups. So this is something that I work on. I work on quite a lot. It's a project that anybody can participate in. So you can join us in any of our meetings, you can participate on the mailing list. One of the things that I think is really interesting about the Chaos project, I think when you think about a metrics project, automatically you're like, oh, I need to contribute code, I need to write some, I don't know, some tools. But the Chaos project has two parts to it. So it has software. So there are certainly people writing lots of tools and writing lots of software to gather data. But we also spend a lot of time just defining metrics. And we define metrics for diversity and inclusion, we define metrics for risk. There are loads of things that we define metrics for, and all you need to have to be able to define some of those metrics is just an interest in the project. So it's things like, how do you measure organizational affiliation? What does it mean to be affiliated to an organization? And so we do also do a lot of defining of the metrics. So anybody can participate in this project. It's a really fantastic project. And lately I've been working a lot with a tool called Auger. So I've been using this within my day job at VMware. And Auger is one of those tools that it has a really fantastic optimized database on the back end. So you're not limited by what they display in the front end. You can actually, they have a really robust API, you can make database calls. And so I've been writing just loads of Python scripts to pull the data that I want to be able to measure out of the Auger database. So I've been using this tool to build some metrics dashboards for VMware projects. And you can see that here I've been running some data on various projects within VMware. Concourse is a project that's coming in through the Pivotal acquisition, which is where I've come in as well. And I'm just using this as one example, but one of the things that I look at is whether or not a project can sustain and keep up with contributions that are coming in. It's really hard to keep up with the flow of incoming pull requests sometimes for projects. And so this is a chart that tells me whether or not a project is keeping up. So if there are big gaps, then a project's not keeping up. If the lines are pretty close together, then it looks like they're closing most of the pull requests that come in. And then another thing that I look at is the response times. So nobody likes to submit a pull request and then it goes into a black hole and nobody ever responds to it. So this looks for median response times of less than a day. So you can see the red ones are, in this case, they were just slightly more than a day, so it's probably not a big deal. And there weren't any of those in the last 6 months. So I would call that a success. The other thing I look at is contributor risk assessment. So what this is how many people does it take to get up to a certain percentage of the number of commits? What you don't want to see is one person who's making 80 or 90% of the commits, which shows that maybe nobody else understands the code base as deeply as just that one person. And so what you want to see is something like what you see here, where Alex is the kind of the founder, the lead maintainer of the project, and he's only at 20%. So there are loads of other people who've been contributing in the past year to the project. So there's not a big risk that if something happened to one of these people, that the project would die and that nobody would know how to maintain it. So this is something I've been super passionate about. I love open source data. It's something I use it in my work, but I also this is sort of my evenings and weekends project as well. So this is something that I am super passionate about and love doing.
Great, Don. So, question for you.
Yeah.
What then can you do with some of the information that you find? Let's say, for example, you do find a project that has one person who's contributing 80 or 90% of the code, or you find that the pull requests are all sort of lagging and you've got a lot more red boxes going across that chart. What do you do with that information?
Yeah, so the first thing I think is by showing this information, you make the project aware that there is a potential issue. And I think a lot of it comes down to knowing that there's an issue and spending the time it takes to address it. So in the case of having one person who's making all of the contributions to the project, that's a really good mentoring opportunity. So maybe they can mentor some, newer contributors, mentor some other people from your company to participate in the project to get more diverse set of contributions, more people involved in the project. If you're not keeping up with pull requests, then knowing that is the first step, and there are some things that you can do to address that. When I worked at Puppet, we actually had a rotating kind of a rotating pull request triage person, and that person would be responsible for getting through as many pull requests as they could in about a week or two, and then it would rotate on to the next person. So there are ways to address these, but I think the first step is knowing that there's an issue and then figuring out what to do with it.
Okay, so it's all about risk assessment, knowing what pieces may you want to include in some of your strategic projects, and then also offering ways to mitigate some of those problems.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I framed it as risk, because, in some projects it might not be a big deal if you're not responding to pull requests right away. Or, if a project isn't particularly strategic, maybe it's fine that one person is doing all of the work within the project. So I think it's important to understand that risk and understand it in the context of how you're using these open source projects within your business or within your company.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. It's been very enlightening, and we appreciate your time today. Thanks, Don.
Yeah, thank you so much.